All right, welcome back to the end of the semester. I think this is week 7, and we've got a few things that I want to go over today and just kind of wrap things up for you. I'm hoping to do a study guide video next week so that you have that to prepare for the final. Really, we're ending this summer semester on a few different pieces, but all umbrellaed under the same idea, which is slavery. So this week we're going to be reading about the peculiar institution or slavery itself. We'll talk about A House Divided, which is the next chapter this week. And then finally next week we'll talk about the Civil War and really where we're ramping up to that. If you are interested in really the end of the Civil War and Reconstruction, that's 112. And I teach 112 in the spring. And then again, I'll teach 112 next summer as well. So that would provide the really end of Civil War and Reconstruction and then go to the present. However, that's not what we're talking about today. And so I want to get back to what we are talking about, which is this idea of slavery. And there's a couple points that I want you to be clear, or at least to understand as you're reading through. American slavery is a little bit different than the slavery that we've seen around the world. Okay, yes, there is this argument about slavery and that slavery has been around for a long time, and that generally it was white people and all of this, and that is accurate. Okay, that is true. However, American slavery is different, and we haven't seen that in a lot of places. First. After we got through with indentured servitude, which is how the United States handled other groups of people, and generally white people, but we put people into indentured servitude like the Irish, Native Americans, the Italians. I mean, there were other people that we did this to, but American slavery or chattel slavery really came by through this idea of color and having African descent. And that is a way that we use to other people, because when we all look the same, it's difficult to other people, and we find other ways, whether that's religion or, different characteristics in that way. However, color is one that we can do very easily. And so chattel slavery took on this idea, or American chattel slavery took on this idea of you're a different color than we are, and so you are subservient. Second, you were born into slavery. In other parts of the world, you could get out of slavery, whether that was buying your way out, which I know that we allowed here, but that was very unusual to be able to buy your way out. But you could buy your freedom. In other parts of the world, you could find a way to be able to have your children not be part of slavery. And with American slavery, you couldn't do that. And you'll read about this week. So this peculiar institution of slavery and the idea that we, or the United States, needed this large group of slaves to work the land. Okay, this is a difficult topic, and I want to make sure that as you read through this week that maybe you take a moment throughout the reading and take a break. Understand that things aren't that great today, but they're not bad either, and we need to find a way to be able to mesh these two. Now, it might not be that big of a deal for you, and that's cool if it's not. For me, it's a big deal. This is what I've spent my academic life doing, is studying slavery and the African American experience in the United States. And so to read some of these things is very difficult. In my other courses, if you were to take 112 or 111, let's just say you took 111 and we talked about slavery during the regular semester, I have you read slave narratives, and those can be very difficult. And in this, you may get pieces of them, but you don't get to read the whole narratives. And so you can count that as good or bad, that you didn't either it's a bummer deal that you didn't get to read those, or you can be grateful that you didn't get to read those. So just take a look, make sure that you're understanding slavery and why it's different in the United States versus other places in the world, and why sometimes when people say that, well, there's been slavery for eons, that you understand why it's different as you're reading this chapter. The next chapter is this idea of house divided, and having the southern states kind of understanding why they feel like that they need to have slavery. It does come down to economics. I would definitely agree with that. I know that there are some Southern historians who will tell you that it's only about economics, and I don't see it as just economics. Okay, it is economics. They've got a lot of land, and they need a lot of people to work that land. It also comes down to racism as well, and being able to be above somebody and have them work your land for free. You're not paying them to work, and so it's easier to be able to say, well, you go out and do this, and I can live this posh life. However, I need to make it clear that not every Southerner was doing this. In fact, the majority of Southerners were super poor and trying to work the land without slaves on their own. Okay, this is an interesting aspect, because I think a lot of times we think that Southerners all had slaves and that they had these slaves that were working the land and they weren't doing anything, except the majority of them actually were working their own land, and they believed in this idea of keeping slaves working these fields to help their economy, even though they didn't have slaves, which is what is going to result in the Civil War. I had my family was non-slave owning, poor farmers in Virginia, and they fought for the Confederacy regardless, because they felt like that this was a big thing for the southern states that they needed to be a part of, even though they didn't own slaves. Okay, so we need to understand that most people didn't own slaves in the South, but those who did owned a lot of slaves. Okay, if that makes sense. So as you read through, understand the two arguments: the arguments for the Union and what they're trying to do, and the arguments for the South, because that is where we're going to see this fight. Okay. Lastly, we see the Civil War. Now, the Civil War, I want you to understand that there is a lot of information out there that will tell you that this was a states' rights issue. And although that is something that comes about later, that is not the reason that the South secedes. Okay, they specifically talk about slavery, and that their rights for slavery, keeping slavery intact, is why they're seceding from the Union. And that is an important piece, because a lot of people will tell you today that it was a states' rights argument and it didn't have anything to do with slavery or racism, and that is vehemently false. Okay, that is false. The secession papers specifically talk about slavery, specifically talk about subservient slaves, and does not talk about states' rights. That is something that we do afterwards to make this all okay. So that's kind of what I want you to look at as we work through these next 3 chapters and into the final exam. Okay, I'll make another video, the study guide video for next week, which should help you to understand the questions. However, I think that you all get the idea that your discussion posts then become the test questions. And really, I try to gauge what way you all have gone, and then make the test for that from that idea and those discussion posts. So anyway, but I'll make a study guide question or study guide video, and we'll go from there. If you have any, as usual, if you have any questions, concerns, complaints, please reach out to me via email, telephone. You can stop by my office. We can stop at Java and have coffee if you'd like, whatever we need to do. I'm willing to chat with you so that you feel like that the end of the semester is good for you. Reach out to me if you need to, and I hope you have a great week. See ya.